Enjoy the show.
Beaming at you from the depths of the internet.
This is the Temple of Geek Podcast, your one stop for all things geek.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Temple of Geek Podcast. My name is Elizabeth, and I will be your host as we discuss the first series of She-Hulk. There will be spoilers for all these episodes, the entire thing, so if you haven't watched all of She-Hulk yet, I recommend pausing, going and watching the show. It's great, and coming back and listening later. If this is your first time tuning into the Temple of Geek Podcast, welcome. The Temple of Geek Podcast has been around since 2012 and is hosted by a variety of geeks from the Temple of Geek team. Here we cover all manner of geek and pop culture news and events. To our returning listeners, thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. So I've got two guests with me today. I have you guys introduce yourselves.
I am Alexandria, and I mostly write for the Temple of Geek, but I have done a couple of podcast episodes as well. Mostly a Marvel nerd, but I come equipped with lots of comic book knowledge to help the discussion along.
Yeah, Alexandria is our resident Tolkien writer as well. And I've been really enjoying her Rings of Power articles and write-ups that she's been doing this last, I guess, couple weeks, since the show aired. My name is Monica. I am the editor-in-chief at Temple of Geek, and I'm usually the host of the Temple of Geek podcast, but it is hosted by a variety of geeks. So today Elizabeth is hosting, but usually I'm the host.
All right, and then for those of you who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth, aka Lady of Time Cosplay. I write for Temple of Geek, mostly Doctor Who stuff, some Marvel thrown in there, and also podcasting sometimes, and sometimes social media takeovers. Hopefully, if anybody was following along, you enjoyed our New York Comic Con coverage, which I had a lot of fun at that con. So, yeah, so let's get started, guys. So, first of all, just overall, now that we've seen all the episodes, because we did talk about the first 4 episodes earlier, just overall, what did you think of the season?
Oh, I loved it. From beginning to end, I thought it was well thought out. It was well developed. They knew exactly what they wanted. As soon as they started, they knew where they were going to end. And it was a very consistent storyline and way to treat the characters.
Yeah, I agree. It was fun. Like, more than anything, it was fun. I liked giggling. I loved the side characters, I know She-Hulk was the star, but some of those side characters were also just like stars. And I just really, really enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Yeah, exactly the same thing what you guys are saying. I loved it. I thought, like you said, it was fun. Not everything has to be, I think we talked about this in the first podcast too, not everything has to be dark and brooding and world ending or multiverse ending. Yeah. It was just fun. It was enjoyable. It was funny. And it was great. And they did some really, really clever things. And I liked how it felt different from some of the other Marvel projects that they've done. It was fun. I wish more people could understand that sometimes stuff is just fun. It doesn't have to be huge explosions everywhere and whatever, which we'll talk about it more later, but I really enjoyed that the finale even, touched on that a bit. It's like, no, you don't have to do this formulaic thing every single time. So we talked about this also in the first episode of the podcast about the cameos and how Jen had said, remember, this is my show, but it's not a cameo every week show. Do you think that the show continued to handle that really well? And what about the fans themselves? Do you think that they handled that as well as they could have?
I think the show did a really good job, especially as it went on, there were less cameos. I think some fans were upset that they had to wait so long for Daredevil just to get him so little, but that's their problem. It's a She-Hulk show. If you were watching it for the cameo of one character, you are the problem, not the show. So, I think the show did great and handled specifically Matt Murdock's entrance into this version of the MCU very well. And we'll talk about him and Jen later because that made me really happy. But I think some corners of the internet need to just get it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot of cameos for any show. Like, had it been any other show in the MCU, like WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, even Loki or whatever it was. Loki had a lot of like cameos in that one episode with all the different variants and things like that.
Right.
But I feel like this show had a lot of cameos. I'm not against it. I think that was great. It made it like fun. I loved all the superheroes that like started coming up, like these little side characters, these little one-offs. I didn't know anything about it, so it was kind of fun to kind of look up who these characters were in comics and things like that. And most of them were like nobodies. I mean, like, but it's just fun to see them like on screen. And it got me excited for the possibility of like future seasons where she's just having like these legal issues. It's just a legal sitcom drama. You know, everything wraps up at the end of the episode type thing. Like, that sounds fun to me. And I look forward to like all her legal cases that her pug and, what's her friend's name? Nikki. That Nikki and, her will all solve together. So it was great. I thought it was a good balance. And as far as the fans, I think we talked about this before on our last podcast episode, but I created a little bit of an echo chamber for me because I get all the issues that certain fans have with the show, but if I keep listening to them, it will take away my joy from the show. And I try to be like partial when I hear their reactions and things, and some of them are straight misogyny. Some of them are straight, just, nasty. But there are some where they have complaints about the fact that She-Hulk doesn't fit into that formula that Marvel has had for so long. So I understand that some people don't like change and it's hard for them to see change. And I'm like, okay, I get that. But for me, I'm somebody who can adapt to change. And so it was just fun and I enjoyed it. And I do like getting new things and it's not like the same repeat thing over and over. So I had to, because of the misogyny and because of just really negative critiques that kind of stole the joy from what I was enjoying, I kind of created an echo chamber. So I don't think that I really saw the full extent of what the negative comments and feedback on the show was.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think I've said, I can't remember if I said this on the podcast or if I just tweeted about it, but I think just Marvel fans need to watch more Doctor Who so that they can get used to change and get used to some janky CGI once in a while, Yep. But yeah, again, like everything, all the cameos that came up, especially the cameos of characters that we had seen previously in other shows or movies, all felt very natural. I loved how I kept seeing theories from different people about how Matt was going to fit into different, because there were theories about when he's going to show up and how he's going to show up. And I really liked how they ultimately brought him in, because I initially remember seeing a lot of people being like, oh, is he going to show up, in episode 6 because maybe Jen needs a lawyer to help her with But for him to be the lawyer for, I can't remember his name now. For the costume designer. The costume designer. Especially because he has an interest.
I think it was Luke Jacobs.
Thank you. Yeah. For him to be Luke's lawyer, especially because he has a vested interest in making sure that his client list does not get out. Even though he does admit to Jen in the bar that Luke has made him some suits, and it's like, my guy, really? They did they did a really good job of making those cameos feel natural and like they made sense for where these different characters came in. Like you were saying, Monica, too, I really like that they brought in cameos of characters that we hadn't seen on screen yet, too, especially from my understanding, they're slightly more obscure characters. I don't want to make any because it was kind of funny watching
if you didn't
people
know, you weren't gonna know. That's
yeah, because I saw a tweet the other because people were discussing Scar. Is that how you pronounce the Hulk's son's name?
Yes.
Discussing his haircut and he was on screen for 5 seconds and people were complaining that they had ruined him or whatever. But I saw a tweet of somebody saying 90% of you never knew who this character was before he showed up on screen, so shut up. Really, you gotta complain about this. I even saw people complaining about how they handled Mr. Immortal, but I'm like, he was a fun character. I really enjoyed that storyline because we got to learn a little bit more about Nikki and a little bit more about Mallory Brooke. I loved that scene with Nikki just sitting on the table cross-legged, figuring out the different things that they could do to make a settlement with all of his exes. Like, that was so much fun, Nikki was great in that episode. I loved, she's great. She's a great friend. She's one of my favorite characters for sure from the entire season. But yeah, the fans were a bit irritating. I personally thought it was hilarious that they teased Matt 2 episodes before he actually showed up.
Oh, that was at the fanboys waiting for him for sure. They're like, look, he's coming. Not yet.
Not yet. Especially because the next episode is the wedding episode. And Jen is literally like, yes, it's a self-contained wedding episode. And if you think it's inconvenient, yeah, that's how weddings are. I thought that was hilarious. That was so much fun.
These writers understood their target audience so well.
So well.
And they understood the feedback that they were going to get so well. And they wrote it right into the show. And that's amazing. Like, very, very few writers could have pulled that off. And I think they did brilliantly.
For sure. Oh my goodness.
Somebody on TikTok mentioned, and oh my God, I wish I knew who it was, but it might have been Amanda just vibing, and she said, how did they know like what was going to be trending and like what was going to be going on? Because it felt like the show was really relevant to what like is going on TikTok discourse now and things like that outside of the show, right? And
it's almost same criticism that every other woman has gotten for existing.
Time is a flat circle, for crying out loud. Like, this is a completely other thing, but I am having John Locke flashbacks every time I see stuff about 13 and Yaz, like that kind of thing, like fandom discourse is a flat circle and it'll just come back around if you wait long enough.
That's a fair point.
Same criticism happened for when Captain Marvel came out. Same criticism happened for WandaVision, in addition to where's Mephisto? And I'm mad about theories that I made up in my head, even though they make no absolute sense to what I've seen in the show. I'm like, you guys realize she's been in like 1,500 comics and Mephisto showed up in 2 of them, right? Like, we understand that theory actually makes no sense whatsoever. Okay.
I want to know who the person was.
I had somebody on TikTok try and tell me, like, oh, this show is, I'm waiting for everybody to acknowledge that She-Hulk was a dream sequence from, like, the car crash on. And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, it doesn't make any sense otherwise. And I'm like, I'm just going to be done with this conversation because I'm like, just because the rules are slightly different within the comedy version of the MCU versus, like, the straight drama, spy, thriller stuff that we've seen before doesn't mean it's a dream sequence. I was like, what the heck? But yeah, it's just, anyway. But yeah, again, I just thought it was so funny how they teased him at the end of episode 5 and then he didn't show up and then he didn't show up in the next episode either. Just like,
you know what? Yes. I just want to say this now, and I don't know if you guys meant to talk about it later or not, but the whole Matt dropping out of the sky on that last episode, I just not stop laughing. The fact that he just dropped out of the sky
in the middle of a retreat, like, where did you come from? Like,
that was so much fun. Like, when she was like, let's fix this, and then all of a sudden she's like, oh, and boyfriend's there now. Like, and I am a sucker for like you said, the writers knew their target audience, and their target audience was me, I think. Mm-hmm. And I'm a sucker for like these swoon moments. So like the guy who eventually betrays Jen and like, steals all her data and everything. I forget his name, but
Josh.
Josh.
Yeah.
That guy, I was swooning through their whole courtship and just
I know.
I was up. And when he betrayed her, like, I'm still hurt about it. And I was like, wow, like, he was so cute and he was so sweet. And I was like, this bastard. And so then, like, all the scenes with Daredevil and Jen, same thing. I was swooning. I was eating it up. And I loved every bit of it. And I don't care what anybody says. Like, that was like perfect for me.
Well, I think because of and like, yes, it was a bit of a twist when Josh betrayed her, but like they wrote it so well that like because of the fourth wall breaks, they needed to make us trust Josh too, and they did that. And then when he was like copying her phone and everything, I'm like, but we liked him.
I know, like
it really hurt me.
Like because I rewatched the final 5 episodes yesterday because I'd already seen the first 4 like 2 or 3 times at least between the screeners and then watching them as they came out. Like, I very closely watched Josh that entire date sequence. I was like, did you give a hint? And they very purposefully shot it so that when we see them together, there's almost never a shot where Jen is not looking at him. So he never drops that facade, apart from like, I don't know if I was reading too much into it, apart from like a little tiny bit when they're in the car at one point and she's like looking out the window like this, and he kind of just has a neutral face, not like a, face. And I was just like, oh man, I really wanted to like you. You were so nice to her at the wedding. Oh yeah. I was just like, man, dude, come on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. But so for the show, was there anything that didn't quite work for you or that you would have liked to see them do differently or even just done more with in the show, even though we only had 9 episodes and short episodes at that?
I mean, I just wanted them to do more episodes. I think this could be like because it is a like sitcom format, I feel like they could have given us like a real season of what television is. Like, and
22 episodes.
Well, see, because I've talked about how much I hate 20 to 22 episode seasons because they're all filler. Like, they're all filler. 1 in every 4 episodes actually moves the story along, and they were hell on writers because writers had to fill 22 episodes, and that's why writers' strikes happen. So I'm not a huge fan of like super long seasons. I think if you can tell your story in 8 episodes, tell your story in 8 episodes. But with this format and the way that they chose to write She-Hulk, I really think we could have gotten like they could have told the story in like 13 or 14 episodes. Like they could have given me more.
Yeah, because it felt like a TV show versus a movie broken up into 9 parts.
And I wrote an article about all of the common criticisms I heard from She-Hulk and why really none of them are valid. One of the biggest ones I heard, well, it's a comedy and it's not funny. I'm like, well, humor is subjective, so you're already wrong. But the whole well, nothing happens. It's a show where nothing happens. I was like, so it feels like a TV show? It's the first show that feels like TV again? Y'all have been so desensitized by streaming services and their original content that you don't know how to watch TV anymore. See, I only watch the shows that have ended 20 years ago. So, Doctor Who and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Bones have prepared me for not needing something to happen every episode. It's just how it is. I think people have truly forgotten just how to watch television. But it felt like a TV show.
Yeah, I agree on all your points, Alexandria. Like, it did feel like a TV show. I really enjoyed it. And I think that's what I enjoyed about WandaVision. It wasn't so much like it was the nods to television that I had grown up with and things like that, and like the sitcom feel and how cheesy every episode was. And it wasn't really leading anywhere for a while. And I think you're right. We were so desensitized to that because we were so used to like the quick episodes and trying to figure out what's going on. And we've almost been trained by, streaming services and just writers and things like that. Like, oh, look for these clues, look for this, and try to, solve the puzzle instead of just consuming it, So I think that hurts shows like She-Hulk. Not that She-Hulk wasn't good or anything, right? But I think the way that we're used to viewing something can skew the way we like perceive something else. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
I
Yeah,
think
for
the
sure.
I think the only thing that didn't work for me was Jameela Jamil's character. I was really excited about having her on. I'm always like a fan of representation. I'm a fan of hers. I think she's a fun actress. I think she's like a good actress. I loved her on The Good Place. And so I was really excited to see her being introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think that they were trying to comment on influencer culture in a way that kind of maybe missed the mark. I think they could have done more with that. And I also don't like the whole pitting women against women with no reason. I know she served the purpose. Like her suing Jen for the name She-Hulk, I love that. I love like the pettiness in it. I love the little rivalry, but I don't feel like it wrapped up in a satisfying way. And like,
I agree with that.
For sure. Yeah.
that's the only criticism I really have of the show was that one, I wanted to see more of her, and I wanted maybe even some character growth from Tatiana, you know, maybe something where her and Jen became allies, or just seeing that their rivalry continued and maybe we'll see it further. But it just felt unfinished, or just she was just kind of thrown in there for fans, not assuming she's the baddie, but she wasn't the baddie after all, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my only criticism.
I hope we see more of her because she was a relatively big part of the comics. Like, she did go head to head with She-Hulk quite a few times, but more than that, she was like an actual part of the universe. Like, she was in Secret Wars, she was in Acts of Vengeance, she was really kind of integral character. I would call her a catalyst for a lot of stories. And so to see her adapted as like a super influencer and then not used very much was kind of a waste, but maybe that's just her setup.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar thought where I would have liked them to do more with Titania, especially because I would have loved to know what reason they would have had for her to be there in that last episode, you know? Because I was like, oh, did she like find out about Intelligentsia as well? And she's like gonna, you know, she has beef with them too. You know, is she gonna team up with Jen here? And you know, obviously everything else goes off the rails, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, I'm hoping. I'm assuming we're getting a season 2. I guess they haven't really officially confirmed that yet, but I do think hopefully that we will see more of Titania in season 2. Just because, like you said, it felt like that was going to be more of a thing, and that they were going to, especially, I had this written down to talk about for a second season, but especially because at the start, Jen seemed like so like, this is so ridiculous, all this influencer stuff, but then like towards the end, she's sort of like starting to get into like her Luke Jacob clothes and everything. And so I thought it would have been interesting for them to explore that a little bit more. Like you said, hopefully season 2. My only other thing is I wish they had not teased Daredevil so early on, like because he does not show up until the last 2 episodes. I would have much preferred if they had left him out of that first trailer. Because it just
I loved it.
Well, yeah, it was fun to know that he was coming, but like just because
it served its purpose.
If the internet wasn't the way it was, it probably would have been fine. But it just created so many issues.
Yeah, that's fanboy's problem.
This is true. Yeah, I know. But and what's funny to me too is I feel like I vaguely remember that it had been, I don't know if leaked is the right word, but like there had been rumors very early on that Matt was going to be in this show. And I think it was because somebody saw his costume on a rack. So the way that they kind of had that in the episode was kind of fun too. And for as well as they really predicted a whole lot of the other reactions to this show, I would have loved for Jen to have a joke when Matt shows up. Like, she kind of does a little bit. She's like, who's this asshole, you know? I would have loved for there to be, like, a joke about, like, this is the guy you've been waiting for? Seriously? Why? And then, like, later in the episode be like, I get it now, you know? Like, that was my only thing. I'm like, it was nice to see him in the trailer, but, man, I wish that I don't know. It was nice to know he was coming and get confirmation of that, but it was just, it made until I, kind of told TikTok through my likes and my, don't show me videos like this again, and blocking a lot of people on Twitter and Tumblr and everything. It was just irritating for people to just be like, oh, he's supposed to be in 6 episodes, so he's going to show up next. It was just like, I was looking forward to him too. But then a part of me, I had seen somebody do a theory about, like, what if he's only in the trailer, and that's going to be the joke at the end of the season. And as much as I really wanted to see him too, I was, like, kind of a little bit thinking, oh, that would be hilarious, and I would love to see that actually, just because people were getting so irritating about it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, apart from that, my only other thing was, why did they stop with the end credit scenes after episode 4? I know they did one in the last episode, but I was like so excited because I remember watching the screeners and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that there's one for every episode. And then episode 5 came and went, and I was
they
like,
conditioned us.
Where'd it go?
They took it away.
They took it away. Like, I've seen somebody say that maybe the scene with Jen going to Luke's to try on her clothes was maybe meant to be, because there were a couple scenes that I could pick out where I'm like, maybe this was meant to be an end credit scene, but they didn't want people to miss it because it was so important, versus something as silly as Captain America, at the end of the first episode. But I was just like, where'd they go? That was so
those
much fun.
Little end credit scenes are so important, like, because they were like the scene where she's like lifting the car for her dad, or like things like that. They're so tiny, but to me, I thought they were really important in just showing how like human and relatable she is, and like these little moments that she has, like the Captain America, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that those were really great, and I wish we would have gotten more of them.
For sure. Yeah, I was just like I was so excited because I was telling people, I'm like, oh, there's, I love that I had told like one of my friends, I'm like, oh, the end credit scene for episode 3 is my favorite, the one where she's dancing with Megan Thee Stallion, and I was like, that was my favorite. It was so funny, and then it was just like, where'd they go? Bring them back. Oh well. But on the other side of that, what was like your favorite part, your favorite character, your favorite episode, just any of specific stuff that you loved about this season? Because there was a lot that I loved personally.
So, okay, we've talked about how amazing these writers are and how they know that their target audience is us, essentially. They did a really good job of making me angry on behalf of Jen. Like, I was mad for her. Like, when she was... when the tape happened during her speech, and she, like, hulks out and she rips down the screen and she gets angry, and then everyone's, like, terrified and starts running out, and she's just like, you can see her calm herself down when she's outside, and then she looks at the audience, and I'm like, no, she's fine. And then the next time we see her, she's in prison, and I'm like, for what? Breaking a screen and like a table? You're fine. No one got hurt. Hulk has broken entire cities and with no consequences. What is this? Like, I was irate, and so I'm like, So I know women wrote this, and they are doing their jobs brilliantly for writing something that made me so incredibly angry. Like,
especially because that was like the end of the episode that everybody was looking forward to with Matt, and I was just like, oh
yeah.
No, oh god,
yeah. It pissed me off, but then I was like, that's really good writing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the very first, so the interaction with Jen and Matt, like, yes, Matt's whole first episode, but this specific scene where he's like, no, I can hear heartbeats. And she's like, that's a little far-fetched. And then it just zeroes in, and Matt's just looking at her, and she's just looking at him, and you can hear her heartbeat. And I was like, this is on Disney Plus. This scene has no business being this hot. What's going on right now? Like, should I leave? Are we good? Like,
I was like, you two want to be alone?
It was good. It was a good moment.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things was that something that we don't get to see on television is a woman dating a lot of men without necessarily being like a slut or something like that, right? Like, I thought that was really great, and seeing her go through like the dating cycle and things like that. Like, it's always okay for guys to date like all these women and all these kind of things and sleep with whoever they want, but like, you know, women are not afforded that, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I think it was really great to kind of see that as like normal and not anything weird, and just a girl out there looking for love and, you know, not having luck and trying again and trying again. So I think that says a lot about, like, you know, Jen, the fact that she's gone through so much but still continues to open herself up to love, and, you know, it's kind of inspiring, it's kind of hopeful, and I love that for her. So I did like that they put that in. I liked and really, like, this thing was targeted for women. It was targeted for people that identify with like these situations in life when it comes to dating and just trying to find somebody, your friends hyping you up, like, you have to go out, you have to go do this, you know, like, that's such a relatable, normal, everyday thing. Yeah. And I love that. I think that I also really loved Pug and Nikki and like Madison with the Y, like, all of these characters. I like how you did that, Elizabeth, as soon as I said it.
That sounds all over TikTok too. People using the first it was fun, and then it was scary, and then it was, you know, whatever that whole line is. It's like all over TikTok right now. People using it to describe their other favorite TV show.
Yeah, I just really loved all of these side characters. Like, you know, they were so great. And one of the things that I really loved about WandaVision was the side characters, right? Mm-hmm. Darcy, Jimmy Woo, and Monica Rambeau, like, their little trio for me was like so fun. It was probably the best part of the show for me, right? Mm-hmm. And I kept saying, oh, I'd love to have like this spin-off series of just them, like, doing like episode of the week, investigating these things happening, right? Like, for me, I would have loved like a spin-off series of that. And so like She-Hulk feels like that to me. Is like, it's this spin-off series of all these other things, and it's just like this self-contained quirky show. And I loved that. And I love these like characters. Like, they were so good. I loved everything about Nikki. I loved everything about Pug. Like, I think more than anything was that they gave Jen a really strong family base too, and then a support system with her friends and her coworkers and things like that, right? Like, that was really important for me. Miss Marvel did such an excellent job with that, and giving her a support system, a community, like, that was really important to me. So seeing that kind of also happen in She-Hulk was a big deal for me, because I feel like so many of these like stories are, you know, isolating. I'm on my own and I have to do this alone, and like pushing other people away. And so many of these hero stories are like that. You just push everybody away. You don't want to
get sad about Peter Parker again.
Well, and actually I was thinking about Bucky with, you know, the Winter Soldier, and like, you know, everybody's pushing somebody away. And you have to almost force them to work as a group or as a community, right? Right. And even the Avengers were a reluctant team. They weren't like all gung-ho. Each one of them just kind of like, I could handle this on my own at first, you know? Yeah. But with these shows like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk, and the fact that they like really lean into community, lean into friendships, lean into family, like seeing Jen have this like great family. Like, I loved her family. Totally loved it. So I think that was more than anything my favorite part, was the fact that she was allowed to have like a life with friends and people, and she didn't have to isolate herself.
Right. I want to go back to what you were saying about her on the dating scene real quick, because I just think it's really important. Too often, women characters, especially in comic books, are over-sexualized, and there is a difference between a sexualized character and a sex-positive character. And She-Hulk was not only the first, but still to this day, one of the only sex-positive characters in the big two as far as comics go. She doesn't get over-sexualized because she is simply a woman existing on the dating scene. Whereas pretty much every other female character in Marvel does get over-sexualized. And they try to... The writers who create these women try to say that they're creating femme fatales, and femme fatales use their sexuality to do whatever they need to do. I'm like, well, that's not how that term works, but all right. Like they try to hide behind it, but it's never correct. But in a sea of over-sexualized women, it's really nice to have her be a sex-positive character. Like, she smashed 4 times in 9 episodes, guys. That's impressive. Like,
Good for you, Jen. Good for you.
And I love it because, not to generalize, but if men had wrote it, we would have had to see it very graphically every time. But women wrote it, so we just knew it happened. And we saw the after part. We didn't have to actually see her have sex. And I think that's important to note as well.
Yeah. Yeah, as much as I was kind of being like annoyed about how people were reacting to Daredevil being in it or not being in it, I loved that episode so much.
They're so good together.
It was so cute. Like, I'm like, I didn't expect to come out of this show shipping Jen Walters and Matt Murdock. Like, what? They're so stinking cute. Like, Matt Murdock in that flannel at the end in the season finale. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And
I'm like, as annoying as Daredevil fans were about when he was going to show up in She-Hulk, I am going to be that annoying about Jen showing up in Daredevil in the new show, because I'm like, she's got to be in it. Please.
Charlie Cox has already said, I would love that. She should absolutely come be on the show. I'm like, yes,
Please.
she should.
Oh my God. Like, please, for crying out loud. I'm like, or like, because we know they're both going to be in the new Disneyland ride, pair them together in the Disneyland ride, please, at minimum. Holy cow. Like, that was so cute. I was like, oh, especially her dad being like, hey, when are you going to have kids? And he's like, oh, God.
We've slept together once, but okay.
I'm like, oh my God, they're so cute. It was just such a fun episode, and I loved seeing. I don't know how I feel about his new outfit and the color scheme, but it was just delightful.
Accurate.
Yeah, and just like, I haven't seen all of the Netflix Daredevil stuff because I am squeamish. But I would love to know, like, the ratio of how much he smiled in this show versus the ratio of how much he smiled in the Netflix show, because I feel like he doesn't smile a whole lot in his own show. And I was like, I think I tweeted that morning even, because that episode came out like the morning that New York Comic Con started. I think I tweeted something like, good morning to Matt Murdock and his beautiful smile, because I was just like, you're wonderful. I love seeing you happy, you know? It was so
and
great.
then like the whole I wonder if it's like a tone thing, right, with the costume. So Daredevil on the Netflix series was a completely different tone than Daredevil and She-Hulk, right? So maybe his costume in She-Hulk reflects a campier side of
well, just to be clear, the Netflix show had pieces accurate, but in the 30 seconds we saw him in She-Hulk, he was more accurate than he was in the entirety of his own show. So,
yeah, and I mean, there is still some debate about if the Netflix shows are canon or not. And I'm like, they played his freaking theme song when he was talking about being Daredevil. I think they're the same universe. Pretty sure. You know, there will be debates about that. I'm like, something that I said, I forget if I said it on TikTok or Twitter or whatever. I'm like, Matt could literally look into the camera, say, hey, remember when I found out who my mom was in season 3? Wasn't that wild? And there would still be people debating if it's canon or not. But I mean, we left him in a really good place at the end of season 3.
Kevin Feige would have to sit down and be like, yes, all of the Netflix shows still exist.
Yeah, I'm like, it's because like people were freaking out because I guess at D23 he talked about how it's a reboot and a season 1, not a season 4, but it's like, one, they haven't written very much of it. He said that in the interview. People just love to take stuff out of context. And 2, reboot does not mean that they are getting rid of what happened before. Example, Doctor Who in 2005.
I mean, you just said it's a different story was his exact words weren't, we're getting rid of everything and starting over. It was, it's a different story.
But, those clickbait websites love to take stuff out of context so that people freak out and click and they get their ad revenue. And people on TikTok love to make inflammatory videos so they get views and get paid for that's a whole other debate.
Which is why Temple is struggling broke. Because we're trying to have
because we don't do clickbait.
And not do
even
whatever. I'd rather be broke than with integrity and the other way around.
Even when I made a video on TikTok about how that was clickbait, I started it with me looking into the camera panics like, Charlie Cox said what? And then I was like, now that I have your attention, because that's what was happening is everybody was like, oh my God, I can't believe that Charlie Cox said that, and it's like, let's get the full context, especially because when they're saying like, oh, in a interview that some other outlet did and we only took bits and pieces from, but it's like, go check out the original source, watch the whole thing, breathe,
relax.
But I'm like, if they're using his, the really awesome theme that they used for the Netflix show when he is talking about being Daredevil, I'm pretty sure that's a pretty clear sign.
And I think
so I love seeing him.
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you.
No, that's fine. I was going to talk about Pug because I loved him so much, especially in the last episode. One thing that I found very interesting is one of the quote-unquote criticisms that I saw every so often of the show when algorithms, tags, whatever, would bring me, like, nasty stuff about the show, is that there were some people, mostly guys, probably exclusively guys, complaining that from their point of view, from their perspective, the show was saying that all men are evil and awful and whatever. And I'm like, did you watch the show? Because yes, while intelligentsia are the big bad, the toxic fanboys, because weirdly that guy was like a fan of Jen.
If that's their take, then the show is at them. It was talking about them specifically.
Because I'm like, there are so many great guys in the show. Matt is great in the show, and Pug, especially Pug. I adored Pug.
Pug trying to infiltrate intelligentsia was the funniest thing. He's like, nope, I can't be mean. This is stupid. I can't. I'm like,
it's like the man couldn't even.
I'm like, Pug, you just have to pretend to be an asshole, and he couldn't. He was very bad at it.
He could barely find it, and it said a lot too about these guys that Pug was so bad at being a misogynistic jerk, but they still were like, yeah, bro, you're one of us, and it's like, oh my God.
They just need to hear the buzzwords. They don't.
And
there were so many great men in this show that I'm like, if your takeaway is that this show is about how men are evil, you are not watching the show and you feel attacked by
for a reason.
You are being shown a mirror in some of these characters and you are saying that it just, it bugged me, but also like I love that they have such great guy characters in the show too, to balance that out and be like, no, this is never what the show has been saying. It's been saying it's these people who cannot fathom a woman having fun, having a great time in her life, she wasn't always super confident, but she, owned who she was. Even it took her a little bit to get to that point. And it's just, I loved it. And Pug especially was one of my favorite characters. Him and Nikki especially going to see the Drip Broker and I was so upset that they didn't have Avengers or Avengers stuff at New York Comic Con. I'm like, you knew that was out there. Why did you not make those shirts for real? Because I would have bought several. But just, especially Pug and Nikki were two of my favorite things in this show. Two of my favorite characters. They were a delight to watch every single time they were on screen, and their friendship too between getting Jen into Luke's client list and then infiltrating the intelligentsia meeting. Just they were great, and I love Jen too, of course. We could talk about that all day, but just those two as side characters were phenomenal.
Well, even just having Wong and Emil, like they were also portrayed in pretty good lights. And Emil, obviously, like was selling his appearances as Abomination when he shouldn't have, because he's not supposed to turn into Abomination. And so even with that, like, I still liked Emil a lot. And I still think that, you know, he was just trying to get some extra cash on the side. Like,
he didn't know what they were actually about.
And I know it makes it hard to draw the line. It's like, oh, well, when is it okay? Appearances, or are you going to be a mercenary one day, right? Like, so I get that he needed to go to jail, all that kind of stuff, but I still don't have a problem with him.
Yeah,
he was great.
That's one of the biggest criticisms I saw of the show after it ended was she's a bad lawyer because she sent her client back to jail. It was like, he broke his parole. She literally had zero other option. There is not a lawyer on the planet who could get their client to stay out of jail after breaking their parole. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, Jen broke hers too. I was like, Jen shouldn't have been imprisoned in the first place. Like, there was no reason for her to have an inhibitor on. So it's not the same thing.
The inhibitor is a terrifying new concept. Like, I don't think anybody's really appreciated that is a thing in the MCU now. That is terrifying.
I mean, yes,
I wonder if this will come into play with, like, introducing X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, because as of right now, we know it was specifically engineered for Hulk-like beings, so we don't know if it works on anybody else with superpowers. And 2, the Hulk in question would have to let you put it on them.
Yeah.
So right now it's they are complying with you on purpose device, not something you can just snap on them, because that wouldn't be a thing that happens. So
yeah.
But perhaps we could see that in being a thing later in the MCU when they do decide to bring in the X-Men, because we know one of the X-Men's biggest storylines are, you know, them being accepted by humanity, and then Eric makes it a them versus humanity. But I think that's going to be an interest. It'll be a lot like the last Stand a little bit when they were talking about a cure. Interesting take.
Yeah, for as much as this show obviously is not a very high stakes show, it's about Jen's stakes, as she says in the finale. It's about her stakes. Like, it introduces some concepts that it's like between the inhibitor and the Sokovia Accords being repealed. Like, there's some major plot stuff happening. Right. I know.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Like, yeah. I'm like, wait, how can we go back to that and explain how that happened? Like, at what point did they repeal these? Like,
they were a bad idea from the start.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, at what point did Tony realize? Like, did Tony realize before he passed? Did he see Peter going around and he's like, oh, this is baby. Yeah. For the low stakes show that it is, it introduced some very interesting concepts that, you know, hopefully we'll see later on, because there was a lot going on.
Hulk walks into the family dinner with Scar, who he says is his son.
Yeah.
Now, he is his son, just to be clear. But I'm very, very interested in how this is going to translate to the MCU, because obviously in the comics it happened very different. The only time he really had time to go off and have a son was, I guess, that time he was in Asgard for like hella long. So, but he was also stuck in Hulk form. So I have many questions on how he made a son.
What is that planet that he ended up on with
Segarra? Yeah, Segarra. With the Grandmaster. Yeah,
right. Which
he was there.
Which would be where it happened.
Yeah.
And so interested in how they explain that. But also, when he does come to Earth, he's banished to Earth, and he wants to kill Bruce when he first gets here. So I'm wondering, at one point in his story we're jumping into, because
he kind of gave me a teenager vibe.
Yeah, but I don't know how comic book accurate his entrance is going to be, like his whole existence, really, because I just don't see a way for them to adapt it to the way the MCU is right now. which is fine. I just like having him. I don't need everything to be comic book accurate. Again, we said this last time. As long as the characterization is accurate, I don't need story points. But the thing with Phase 4 is they have been remarkably comic book accurate for the most part. If they have, with the exception of Multiverse of Madness, everything else has had an air of comic book accuracy, not just in characterization, but in story points. And they've been trending more and more comic book accurate with every project. So I'm wondering if we're just abandoning that completely just to bring Scar in, which is fine. But I have questions.
Well, like, for example, in Endgame, when, or is it Infinity War, when Hulk comes crashing into Doctor Strange's sanctum, in the comics, it's the Silver Surfer. So I wonder if it ties in similarly to that, Or I wonder if, like, with the Krulls, it kind of looked like he was on a Krull ship. I don't know. Where was Bruce?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It looked like he was with the Skrulls.
It could tie in.
They still have to explain that because we know that Nick Fury was also up there with the Skrulls. So we don't know. I mean, I've been waiting for Secret Invasion for forever now. So
I'm just wondering if they found his son and they were like, "Hey, you need to come get him." You know what I mean?
That's a possibility.
That way. And that's why he left and went off to space or whatever. But also, if he was just like a She-Hulk season 2 character, where he's not necessarily tied into the full MCU, but he's working with Jen and they're all doing their Hulk thing, and She-Hulk is just about Hulk family stuff, I would be okay with that.
Yeah. I think that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, we're on the topic, what did you think overall of the season finale? There's a lot we can talk about, I am sure. But Alexandria specifically, I don't know. I wanted to ask if any, because in the room with Kevin, there were a lot of comic book covers in there. I was just wondering if any of those specifically caught your attention in terms of stuff that we've already seen or might see in the future, just because I have zero comic book knowledge.
I watched it a few times and they go by relatively quickly, but like I caught a couple that were... I mean, I just think I just like the idea that there is someone in a room in Marvel headquarters surrounded by comic books taking notes and being like, this is good, we should do this, or this is terrible, we're never doing this. Like, this is... I don't know how accurate that is, because if there's a job called comic book consultant, I would like to apply right now. But I like the idea that someone is keeping track of which comics sell the best and what the audience reaction to these are and what storylines are super integral to these characters going forward. Because, characters get passed off writers all the time. But if one writer writes something that really, really works for a character, that thing gets carried through the rest of their runs, like She-Hulk breaking the fourth wall. Characters change writer hands all the time, but if someone does something that is really works for the character, they keep that thing. But as far as the comic books that showed up in the show, first of all, they're all very far away. So I had to keep pausing to see what covers I could make out. Like the case right next to Jen seems to have Hulk comics in it. But then I paused because I saw a color palette I liked. I paused right behind her when she turns back into Judd Walters. And the second one down, and the one right behind her, is No Road Home. Now, No Road Home is a very big Wanda comic book storyline that also has the Young Avengers. So I am hoping and praying that I'm like, is this a Wanda Solo movie? Is this the story we're going to go with? Because that's fine. I will take any Wanda Solo movie you're going to give me. The last one down is... it looks like a Daredevil comic, so at least you know that they're reading for the characters that are included at the very least in this show. There have been some Marvel projects where I'm like, you Wikipedia'd this character and then went on with your life, but which is upsetting, but fine. What I liked about the Kevin being a bot and not obviously actual Kevin Feige is... It kind of works in the sense of Kevin Feige is brilliant, and he has carried Marvel so well into all 4 of its phases. And for one human to do that is a lot. So to imply that he's like a robot is hilarious, but also the fact, I don't know if you noticed that they gave him a little hat.
Yeah.
They kept his little hat. I'm like, I love this show so much. It was so good.
Yeah, another thing that I noticed with Kevin too is his eyes are the color of the time, space, and reality stones.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was on purpose, because some people were like, oh, it's probably just like the RGB thing for, TV, but I'm like, it's pretty specific though.
Marvel's specific about everything. I refuse to believe that it was just like coincidence.
I'm like, does Kevin Feige have some Infinity Stones?
And then you mentioned the Young Avengers in that one comic book series, Alexandria. Mm-hmm. Do you remember off the top of your head who was part of the Young Avengers in that series?
Specifically, Wiccan and what's his face, her other son. In that one, because that roster has also gone through a few changes. But because it's centered around Wanda, I know both of her kids were in it. I have it. I have the whole thing sitting in my room right now. I know Hawkeye and Vision were also a huge part of it as well. I'm trying to think. It was a big big storyline. Like the Skrulls were in it, the Kree were in it. There was like Olympus gods in it. Like it was a huge storyline. So I don't know if they'll ever attack it like wholeheartedly in the MCU. But I think if they did,
that kind of sounds that kind of sounds like what's already happening. I mean, in Thor, we found some, like in Thor: Love and Thunder, we get the gods, right? We got Zeus and the new one that's coming out.
Because the gods of Olympus were really integral to the story, and it was an interesting team because like the main team was Hulk, Vision, which we could get through White Vision, I guess, Spectrum, Monica Rambeau, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, and Hercules, and Rocket Raccoon, all people we still have in the MCU. So
which all sounds very familiar as to like where that could possibly be heading.
You could do this. So I am, because it's my goal in life to own every comic book Wanda ever appeared in. It's going to be a very expensive trek here, but that's one of my. Kate Bishop appears, and that's the other major one that's in there. So so they have brought in everyone they need to for that storyline. So even if I just get bits and pieces of it, I want it.
Well, thank you for answering my questions.
Yes.
It's nice to have an expert on the team.
No, because I was so curious, because I'm like, I don't know any of these comics. I'm like, I did. Can you guys hear me? Because my waveform is not showing up.
I barely can hear you.
Really low.
That's fun. Okay. I'll get closer. Oop, I just...
I don't know if you can adjust the volume on your side for your mic or not.
I'm not sure if I know how to do that. Hold on one.
I mean, I can edit the nice thing about Zencastr, it gives you the audio files individually, so I can like bump up your audio file if I need to, and keep Alexandria's and mine really the same.
Yeah.
Hope that mutes me. Yeah, I'm not sure if I know how to turn up my microphone, so that's...
Usually it's like do you have a Windows computer?
Yeah.
Usually at the bottom where you see the little like volume button, if you open the settings where it says like all settings next to it, once you click on the volume button, it should give you the option to like check the volume on your audio devices.
Okay. Oh yeah, that is really, really low. Manage sound devices. It's just... Is that any better?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Here, I'll turn it up even more. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Perfect.
There we go.
Ooh, now I know how to do that. That's exciting.
Okay. Sorry.
Of course, I completely forgot what I was going to say.
Comic books.
Comic books, yeah. Yeah, like, because I really wanted to ask that, too, because I have I've started reading a couple of Spider-Man comics just because he's my new favorite guy. Like, I read the Renew Your Vows, which was fun. And I'm like, if they ever get anywhere near this in the MCU, I will sob and cry and be so happy. Especially because I didn't realize when I picked it up, I was just like, oh, this is just cute. And then it's like, oh, this is part of Secret Invasion. And I'm like, say that again?
Secret Invasion is amazing. As soon as Captain Marvel came out, I'm like, we have the Kree, we have the Skrulls. Yeah. Give me Secret Invasion. And they keep setting it up. Like, they keep going back to, we are still in contact with the Skrulls. I'm like, I swear to God, if you do all this and you don't give me Secret Invasion.
I know, I'm really excited for that show, too, especially because Olivia Colman's in it, and I love her so much.
Yeah, it's fair.
Cannot wait. I think I mostly recognize it because you've used it in the banner for the story that you did about one of the She-Hulk things that you wrote. used one of the covers where it's Jen and then She-Hulk behind her. I think I spotted that somewhere in there. And I was like, oh, I recognize that one, but the rest of them, I'm like, I got no clue.
Yeah, I actively read comic books, but I also research comic books, like, a lot. I was like, because you have to. I mean, when you read as many comic books as I read, I can't remember everything. Like, I can't memorize all of these comic books. Especially because I love back issues. I want to go back to the beginning of comics and read all the way through what's happening today. And so some things I'm like, well, I don't really like this character, but this is an important storyline, so we're just going to research everything that I can about it. Because that saves me time in actually reading it. But, like, I know I have read every single She-Hulk comic, pretty much. And the show was so unbelievably accurate to not just, like, her characterization and everything, but the finale. Like, she is fully called out in the comic books, whoever her writer is at the time. She's, like, ripping through the page like she did through the screen, like she popped through her title card. Like, that is straight out of the comic books. And so I saw this one comment from this one dude who was like, well, I don't like how much she breaks the fourth wall. And I was like, but, like, that's, like, her character's thing, though. And he's like, well, I just don't like fourth wall breaks. I go, then why would you watch a show where that's, like, her entire shtick, my guy? Like, sounds like a you problem, because that's literally what she does. That's what she's known for. And now that, what's his face? Deadpool is now officially part of Marvel. I want them to I don't want them in a scene together. I want them to reference each other. I want her to reference him stealing her thing. I want him to make jokes about her breaking the fourth wall. I want them to break the fourth wall at each other, but I don't want to see them together because that's funnier to me.
And, you mentioned that somebody commented about, like, oh, I don't like it, then why are you watching the show, kind of thing. And I think that some fans still feel like they have to watch all these shows to understand what's going on. I
understand that.
So I can understand where somebody might have to watch a show just to make sure they don't miss anything. But I think we might be moving away from that a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because, like, for example, Miss Marvel was pretty standalone when it, you didn't need to see everything else, even the Captain Marvel stuff, to kind of understand what it was. Her obsession with Captain Marvel was the posters on her wall. We knew she was a superhero. So you didn't really need to know, like, Captain Marvel's whole story to understand that she was a fangirl of Captain Marvel. So we might be moving away from that. I don't know if that's an accurate assumption or not. But, all, like, like Hawkeye, for example, that's another one that was kind of standalone. The introduction, the Avengers musical and all that kind of stuff kind of like sets a little bit of a story for us. I don't think we necessarily had to like watch everything to understand what was happening in Hawkeye.
Though I will admit I was really bad fan and had not seen Black Widow before I watched Hawkeye, so I was a little confused about Yelena, but that was Google. It was pretty self-explanatory about what was going on.
Right. And I think anything that these shows have revealed thus far is very easily catch-upable without watching the entire series. Like
exactly. Like, because like with Miss Marvel, I was so angry about the Department of Damage Control having the Stark drones. But that's not something you necessarily needed to know the whole backstory of. It was just kind of like a bonus, like, I am angry about this because, whatever. Because Mysterio was a little bit right about the drones being in somebody bad's hands, but that's a whole other.
Yeah. And then also Nate always brings up this point to me, which is that it could just be a reset point for new fans to jump into shows the way like the 11th Hour was in Doctor Who and things like that.
Well, I think they've realized that they've cranked out so much content now. It is unreasonable to expect people to watch 30 movies and like 12 TV shows to know what's going on in the universe. So I also think Endgame was a really good closing point. Like you can always go back and watch the old stuff, but phases 1 through 3 were massive. So if you just ignore all that and jump in, even if you jump in from Spider-Man, because he was technically the last film of Phase 3, you understand that something big happened. We lost a lot of people, and now you can move on. And I think if you just jump in from there, then you're good. But these last couple of shows, because I thought Ms. Marvel was a really good place to jump in as well, they're creating new entrance points for people so that they don't feel so overwhelmed. And I think that's really important.
And I think they're getting a bit better too about like explaining within the different projects the relevant information. Like you don't have to know everything. There's stuff that's nice to know, like I said, with Miss Marvel and the Department of Damage Control having the Stark drones, and that's a whole thing. It's like you didn't need to know that they had those because of what happened in the Spider-Man movies.
Right. And it's funny
it's
because
nice to know, but you don't have to in order to enjoy the story.
And I think we've mentioned this a lot because we keep comparing it to like Doctor Who, for example, but I don't think there's another franchise that has been around as long, maybe Star Trek, but that's been around as long as like that would have like as many seasons as like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? That has as much history.
Doctor
I
Who,
could dedicate my life to catching up on Doctor Who, and I would never be able to do it.
Right.
Especially when because Doctor Who's got all those audios. It's like in the comics and the books and the everything, So
well, and I think that's funny because
Who, like, I had no idea. I'd never even heard of Doctor Who before I watched like Matt Smith's run, but I still understood everything without needing to like. I hadn't seen 9, 10, 11. Well, I hadn't seen 9 or 10 when I jumped into at 11. And I never even heard of Doctor Who before I jumped in. Yeah. And I still enjoyed it. I still got it. I still figured it out. I still understood. I had no history on it, no context. So, I mean, I think Marvel fans will be doing the same.
What Doctor Who is really good at is like re-explaining his trauma and his backstory every Doctor. And every Doctor handles it differently. So it's nice to not have to be like, what's he talking about? What do you mean? You know, because it is such an integral part of the character that they just bring it up all the time so you know what's going on. And Elizabeth, you said something like, you don't need to know everything to enjoy the story. It's nice to know the details, and I feel like before Endgame you couldn't do that. Like, lots of people saw Endgame without having seen everything else. I promise you they didn't understand as much as they thought they did. Like, they're like, I didn't see any of the Marvel Universe, and I liked Endgame. I'm like, I'm glad you liked it. You didn't actually understand it, though. I promise you didn't get it. Like, you really did. In order to understand the emotional impact and weight of that movie, you did have to see every other Marvel project because it did a callback to every other Marvel project.
Yeah, even with... I had only seen the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies when I saw No Way Home the first time. Mm-hmm. And I did go back and I bought on DVD Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's and watched those. I knew, like, you know, I knew the impact of him catching MJ in that movie because the gifs had been all over Tumblr for ages. And so I was aware of that, but you could enjoy that movie.
Cried in the theater.
Without, you could, as someone who hadn't seen those other movies, like, I appreciated what was going on, but after then going and watching those other ones, there was more details that you understood, but they weren't integral to enjoying the movie as an overall thing. Right. Which I think is what they are starting to do better with the Marvel stuff. Yeah. For sure.
I think something that I would like to note is that sometimes fans get secondhand information, right? Like, I feel like the majority of fans get their comic book knowledge from an article they wrote, maybe, or if they even read it, right? But a lot of times fans get their information from other creators on platforms like TikTok or Twitter or things like that. And sometimes fans get like offhand information from someone who read a comic and said A, B, C, or D, or clickbait articles. Because in my experience, most people don't read articles. They read headlines and then make assumptions based on the headline.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like that's the main thing. And then the headline will be like, oh, Marvel changed this, blah, blah, blah. And then people don't go in to read the context. They just hold on to that like headline that they saw and make their own assumptions. And so once you've made your own assumption about something, like, then all of a sudden you feel like an authority to like comment on it. And I think that, you know, I don't see behaviors changing anytime soon. I think that that's just the way things are. But I think it is important to note that maybe we should take, you know, what some comic commentators say with a grain of salt and just like, okay, I see what you're saying, but not take it too personally, because I think a lot of discourse happens around just like random talk, like just offhand talk.
Yeah, and I in fact, I had an interaction like that when I first started being on TikTok. Someone with their whole chest said something like, Wanda is not a telepath. And I'm like, excuse me. Yes, she is. And then they like doubled down in, she's never displayed any telepathic abilities. And me, who spent 2 hours making infographics citing every power she had and what comic book it was used in, went, yes, she is. And right here. And I just started citing every instance in comic books that had happened, title and issue number. And she backed off. She goes, oh, I didn't realize. I'm like, look, you don't have to be an expert on everything in comics. That's fine. I don't like gatekeeping. You jump in at any point. However, if you are going to speak like you're an authority on the subject, you better actually be an authority on the subject, because I come with receipts. And especially, and I'm pretty good at scrolling along when I see something that irritates me, but when it's about Wanda, I just have no self-control. I'm like, I will be correcting this right now because that's my favorite character, and I promise you, no one knows more about that character than I do. She is the most actively researched character in my life. You don't have to be an expert on everything, but if you're going to talk like you're an expert, you better actually know what you're talking about, because then you're just spreading misinformation, and then other people start echoing you, and they're loud and wrong as well. And like, isn't that embarrassing? Aren't you embarrassed?
Well, and I think sometimes as the viewer as well, right? Like, we see somebody speak with a sense of authority and confidence, and we think, oh, they know what they're talking about. Look how confident they are, right? And so we as the viewer, or like the consumer of content that we scroll through and things like that, there's also kind of a little bit of responsibility on us. Like, well, kind of maybe, where did you get this info? Oh, somebody on TikTok said that. Okay, but like...
But where did they get their info?
Yeah, where did they get their info? What are their, what's their knowledge base, that kind of thing. So a little responsibility falls on the viewer, of the consumer of the content as well. which is why I say we really need to take a lot of the stuff with a grain of salt, you know? And then there's also, you know, never mind. I can't remember what I was going to say about that, but continue.
Yeah, no, I know. I just got to say too, I loved how clever they were in the use of the Disney Plus platform in that finale too.
I thought my TV was broken. I thought it kicked me out.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey.
It was funny because I was like sitting there, like because one of the reasons I don't watch comedies a lot is because I get secondhand embarrassment. And I was like sitting there watching this entire thing kick off, and I was just like, what happened? I'm like, this is off the rails. And then Jen said, this is off the rails. And like, I was going to go pause it just because I needed a second to process it. And then it like went, I was like, what? And then she burst out of it. I was like,
the fact that she went into Marvel's Assemble.
Yeah.
It's so self-aware, and I love it.
It was just really, really well done.
So clever. Especially because what I realized, I was making GIFs of it later too, and like they changed the aspect ratio even too, so it does look like it's the entire screen, and then it stays the entire screen while she is still in the quote unquote real world. And I'm like, this is so clever.
Good.
I love this, especially her like walking through the Disney Studios lot. I was like I couldn't believe what I was watching.
The camera guy just had fun walking around. Like,
I was just like, hold up. And then just her like in the Marvel Studios office too. And it was funny because I recognized it. I mean, because a few weeks, like a little while ago, they put out a video of Iman taking a tour of the Marvel Studios. I'm like, this is the real Marvel Studios.
It is,
And holy cow, you know. And it was, I thought it was like, because we had talked about it, I knew that she was a fourth wall breaker, and I had seen the comic book covers of her, like, you know, ripping the comic and being like, what the heck is going on in this, you know. Mm-hmm. But I was like, this is so clever to do this because it is a self-aware TV show that knows what platform it is on.
Yeah.
For her to just bust out of there on the Marvel home screen and get into Marvel Studios Assembled so that she could go talk to Kevin. I was like,
it was great.
This is the best thing.
Not to mention, like, you know, if you're somebody who's had to watch screeners, they make you sign I don't know how many like non-disclosure agreements, you know, and you have to initial over every little thing that says like, you're not going to let anybody else see this, you're not going to like, you know, report on this until the embargo date, you're not going to this, and like there's so many checkoffs. So when they were making her sign the NDA, I was like, yeah, this tracks.
Yeah,
that's about right. If you're going to launch complaints, you must sign NDAs.
Aaron, who he works at Marvel now, he said that when he was watching that, he was like, yeah, that's the NDA that I had to sign. I was like, that's amazing.
Oh, that's so funny.
That's so great.
I can't wait till the day I get called up and I have to sign a like 50-page NDA.
Well, even at New York Comic Con, like me and one of my friends went on stage at the Marvel booth. Like, it was kind of, it was a whole thing because they were having like a Spider-Man cosplay showcase or whatever. But like we weren't allowed to go on stage until like the very end because technically they didn't, I'm like, you're owned by the same people. Why can't, but whatever, you know, because we were the Mandalorian versions of the characters. But even just going on stage for like 2 seconds at the end of that, we had to sign like waivers or like, you know, something, and I'm like, yeah, this is what Marvel does. You know, like even one of my friends Binghamton Spider-Man, like Marvel took pictures of him for their Instagram, and he had to sign all sorts of stuff too, and so that they knew that
they can't post people. Your stuff without permission. Especially because we get revenue from things like that, and so like even like when we were at BlizzCon and Blizzard's official, like, you know, team was out there, you know, taking photographs of cosplayers and stuff, they were signing like waivers for everybody. If they didn't get a waiver from you, they were not going to show your picture online.
Yeah. And I was just like, man, but it was, I loved that entire sequence. Like, even if it had just been Kevin Feige and they made like a joke about the robot, like the robot was even great. Though I was sitting there, I'm like, this is Portal. Like, this is a GLaDOS robot. Oh my God, you know, but just the entire thing was so clever and so well done, especially because I was in the same position of Jen where I was sitting there. I'm like, why is everybody here? What is going on? I remember like getting irritated when Bruce smashed into the building. I was like, no, this is Jen's show. She gets to save herself. What is Bruce doing here?
It was when dude injected himself with Jen's blood and started to Hulk out. I'm like, that's not how this works. We already established that's not how this works.
Yeah. I was just like, why is this happening? And Jen was like, why is this happening? I'm like, yeah. And then I was like,
glad we're all on the same page.
I was like, this is great. And then she would like, for her to be then like, you know, she, especially the, why are we doing this in the nighttime? You know, let's have some bright daylight. And even more so her being like, would not mind seeing Daredevil again. I was like,
I also would not mind seeing Daredevil again.
Same.
Her I'm a Hulk. We smash things. And sometimes Matt Murdock. I'm like, yes, good for you.
And then how she even asked about the X-Men too, and then looked at the camera and went, you know, just like,
because we're all asking that question, Jen.
It's amazing. I was just like this. I was like, I love when television is self-aware like that. Like I said in the last one too, Gallivant is another one of my favorite.
Oh, I love Gallivant.
That they break the fourth wall in interesting ways all the time too. Like they literally sing in the season finale of season 1, will all this singing kill our Nielsen ratings? And they talk about setting your DVR and, you know, and I'm like, and in the season 2 opening song, they talk about like, you know, screw all those apprentices and every bachelorette, tune into the miracle that no one thought we'd get. I love stuff like that. It's fun. It's so much fun. And I feel bad for the people who think that it's cringy because I'm sorry you're missing on how much fun this is.
I feel like some people don't know how to have fun. And I think that because as, you know, when we're kids and we're watching these things, all the explosions and all the like superficial, like, you know, story arcs and stuff like that, we don't really understand them, right? And now as we're getting older, we want like more serious things that we can relate to that aren't just like, you know, so we start to take comic books more seriously. We start to take like, you know, TV and movies more seriously. And we like ask for more of like to grow, for all of that to grow up with us, right?
Right.
And we forget that things used to be fun and just silly and just off the rails.
Yeah,
and
not everything's a puzzle, like you said. Not everything's a puzzle to be solved.
Yeah.
That's I could talk about that finale for ages. Yeah, one other thing, because somebody, you guys brought it up, the whole blood plot thing. When I was rewatching yesterday to like just, you know, through everything again, I don't think Jen completely erased everything with that. Like she definitely erased that guy getting powers because that was so ridiculous.
So stupid, yeah. So
stupid. But if you watch that scene towards the end, I forget which episode it is, but you see it at the end, you see like a lab and a message comes up from Hulk King, not to Hulk King, but to this lab where they are preparing to try to figure out Jen's thing. Like she doesn't know about this other lab that was part of Hulk King, you know, trying to get those powers. Right. I'm like, they still have her blood somewhere. There's still something that could come up.
I assumed it was for like experiments, like they were going to try and duplicate a formula or something, or like trying to find a weakness. But the idea that injecting Hulk blood to make yourself a Hulk was really stupid. I'm like, that wouldn't work under any circumstances. You can't fiction your way out of this. So sorry. Like,
because even in because I think they even previously on to that in that episode where like they showed, you know, in the first episode where they previously on, you know, Bruce destroying the blood samples that he had taken and everything. And it's like,
right.
But still somewhere out there, somebody has a sample of her blood and it is going to cause problems later, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the guy's name because I have not watched the original Hulk movies. But he is supposed to be in the Thunderbolts
right,
thing.
the scientist that comes back.
Or not Thunderbolts. Isn't he supposed to be in the next Captain America movie? One of those with the... I can't remember what his name is because I haven't watched the movies.
I was Googling it right now. It was one of the scientists that worked with the gamma ray radiation stuff.
Yeah.
And
so I'm assuming that's going to be tied in somehow.
Yeah, he was in one of the Hulk movies, and he's the one that, like...
or something. His name is something like the leader or something to that effect. Because I think
he's the scientist that got out of control and was like...
Yeah, and he's either supposed to be in Thunderbolts or the new Captain America movie. I can't remember which. Like, they did talk about that at either D23 or San Diego Comic-Con. But
yeah,
I was like, oh, so that's still going to be a thing. It's just not him getting Hulk powers from injecting himself with Jem's blood because that was stupid. He
I think it was bad.
Like, he didn't get any taller. He just got, like, wider. And I'm like... And then he had no neck. And I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's definitely going to come back up again. Even, like I said, this show was silly and fun and lighthearted, but there's definitely some stuff that can come up again that is going to cause some problems later down the line for everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And just, yeah, I loved it so much. So if there is a second season, like they seem to be hinting about, or Jen even shows up on the big screen, what would you guys like to see with that?
So I want to see Jen on the big screen because, yes, she has, for most of her individual comic book runs, she was a street-level lawyer, comedy, whatever. She also had a really big part in these massive, massive storylines. And because we're getting Secret Invasion and Secret Wars, I expect her to be in it. Like, they have no excuse now. If she's not in it, I will be very upset. Because it's not like they're shoehorning her in because now she's in the MCU. She was a part of those storylines in the comics. There's no reason for her not to be in the MCU.
Yeah, for me, I don't want to like hope for certain things and then get disappointed later kind of thing. But I did really enjoy the side characters on this show. I like the little like legal battles. I love the episode with Megan Thee Stallion. Why am I tripping on my words? Megan Thee Stallion, where, you know, the Asgardian woman was like pretending to be her. And like, I want to see more of these little like issues that would come up in the superhero world. The incident with the Luke Jacobs suit, where they were using the wrong fuel, and that's why his suit blew up. I don't know. I found that fascinating. The immortal man that you mentioned earlier, Elizabeth, that had all these wives and kept faking his death to get out of things, I find that very fascinating. Like, these little tiny things of like what would happen if like the MCU was real and things like that are really fun for me. And I would like to see those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. I'm hoping that if we do get a season 2, that it will be more of that, case of the week type stuff versus, which they did do that for the most part, but, because it was the first season of a show introducing a new character into the MCU, like they kind of said in the writer's room scene, like there was certain things that they had to do to, just different beats that you have to hit for various reasons, though have to, I guess, maybe not, but I'm hoping that if they do a season 2 that they can do more of that week by week stuff, because that was when the show seemed like the most fun. Like I'm not saying that it wasn't fun that last episode with everything coming together and then kind of Jen picking that apart and be like, no.
Right.
But the week to week stuff is what made it feel like a TV show and not, like I said, a movie broken up into 9 parts, which is what's been happening with a lot of the shows, and which is why I was really happy when they said that, Armor Wars is now going to be a movie versus a Disney Plus thing. I'm like, that makes sense, because
it does.
When
they announced it as a Disney Plus thing, I was like, but there's so much to do.
Yeah. I'm like, the Disney Plus series are really great for setting stuff up that we can see later in the movies. Like, Miss Marvel could have easily been a movie or two, but you know, we got it basically felt like two movies for Miss Marvel. And some of the, especially like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, felt like a movie broken up. And so it was fun to have these things actually feel like TV episodes and not, you know, a huge, massive thing that, you know, you would maybe think to see on the big screen more than on the small screen.
Right.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the long form storytelling. I think
I mean, it's fun. It's good, but it's also nice to have TV that feels like TV as well, I guess, is what I'm going for. Like, I like the big overarching things too, but episodic, it's more fun sometimes, depending on the character. And I think it fits her character a little bit more too.
Right.
Because it feels like a lot of the Disney Plus stuff is them setting up movies versus setting up more seasons of a show.
Right.
The other thing too. Again, I really hope she shows up in the Daredevil series just because it would be fun. And and like we said before, I hope that we see Titania again in season 2, because like we were talking about, it felt like a little bit of a missed mark in terms of discussing the influencer culture within the MCU and the different, like, how that impacts things. And like, I kind of want to know where Titania came from as well. I'm like, how did she get her slightly superpowers? That'd be interesting for me to know. And then I think I said this before earlier too, but I can't wait to see her in the new Avengers Campus ride, because she is in the concept art for that ride. So hopefully, and I feel like they could do some really fun stuff with her breaking the fourth wall, even in the ride.
For sure.
Like, because I remember when I went to Disneyland, I think when the Tower of Terror retheme had just happened and they had just opened the Guardians Mission Breakout, I was talking to Captain America, and he said something about like how, like, oh, I keep hearing about how the Guardians keep getting themselves, you know, captured by this guy, but then by the time I get over there to help, you know, they've broken out again, but then I hear that they're back there, you know. And so I'm like, they could do something really clever with Jen in that ride, kind of in that vein. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be fun too. But just, I hope we see her again, because she's so much fun. You know, she's definitely one of my new favorite characters. I've been thinking about making a cosplay of her, but like in her human form, because I do not have muscles at all. I did see a couple people cosplaying She-Hulk at Comic-Con, which was really, really fun, and I enjoyed seeing that. But I kind of want to make her like super suit, but just like in human form or something. And I hope we see her again, because she's a really fun character, and I'm looking forward to what else they do with her.
Yeah.
And before we sign off, I do want to say really quick that I have enjoyed taking this She-Hulk adventure with the two of you. Alexandria, your comic book expertise in this area has been so great for me. I loved editing your articles on She-Hulk, all the ones you wrote for Temple of Geek. It's a pleasure. It was enjoyable for me to read. It's enjoyable to go through this process with you. And also being able to do these 2 podcast episodes with the two of you who have such thoughtful takes on things, who are just fun to talk to in general. Like, I just want to say thanks. This has been really fun. And, you know, let's do it again for season 2.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, of course. I can't wait. I know.
You guys are the best.
When Secret Wars comes out. Is Secret Wars the next television
the next
thing?
Major one?
I have no idea.
Because I know
who knows what the timeline is.
Rambled in my head. Who knows?
Yeah, because I know, because Black Panther obviously
is all I know right now.
Yeah. Black Panther comes out next month. Can't wait for that. I am going
every
to
time
Prague.
I'm in so we have AMC Movie Pass, so we go to the movies every weekend, and so I see that trailer all the time. And literally the first time like I saw it in the theater, I imagined the title card in memory of Chadwick Boseman, and I started crying immediately. Mm-hmm. And Patrick just looks at me. I'm like, I'm fine. And he's like, baby, it's the trailer. I'm like, yeah, just imagine what a blubbery mess I'm going to be during the whole movie.
Yeah, because that comes out next month. And then
a few more weeks. I'm very excited. I am done waiting.
I cannot wait. I just hope that, because like toys and stuff have started coming out, and I'm just like, I don't want to know. I don't want to see, because like some of the toys for Into the Spider-Verse came out early because it was supposed to come out last weekend, and like it's spoiled some characters that are supposed to be in it. I'm like, dang,
That's such a difficult thing when they have contracts with these toy companies, and
because like all
has to come out no matter what,
Yeah, all the Eternals toys came out way super early, I remember, and then they were like on clearance by the time the actual movie came out, which was too bad. And that was a fun movie. I liked that movie.
I like the Eternals.
I really hope, hopefully we see them. I was so like kind of personally offended that Marvel didn't do a panel at New York Comic Con. Like they had some comic panels, but they did not do any TV movie stuff at Comic Con. I was like,
they kind of already announced all their stuff. They didn't really have much.
For the fact that literally like
2023 and San Diego Comic Con, so it was a lot.
A week and a half, like the week before New York Comic Con, they announced Deadpool 3 with Hugh Jackman coming back, and I'm like, literally the both of them are in New York City right now. Hugh Jackman is 15 minutes down the road at the Winter Garden Theater, and
if there is not one song in Deadpool 3, I personally riot. Like it'll just be me outside of Marvel headquarters with a sign, and I don't care.
I know, and then he's also. And then Ryan Reynolds they're filming a movie right now. I'm like, they're literally both in New York City. You couldn't have done like an announcement. Really? But that's a whole other thing. So there's that. I think What If season 2 comes out early next year is what I heard. I would probably not because Bad Batch comes out January. Was supposed to come out this year, but they had to push it back for whatever reason. I think because Andor won't be over by the time they wanted to put it out. What If? Then we're gonna have to figure something out because the new Ant-Man comes out Gallifrey 1 weekend. So, oh no, I can't hear you guys. Why can't I hear you guys?
Oh, sorry,
you were muted. It's like, what happened?
Alexandria, are you going to Gallifrey 1?
I couldn't find any press information on it. Like I was trying to go
find
press. Oh, that's so annoying.
It's very small. The con is 3,000 people.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's mainly just panels and people hanging out in the lobby all weekend getting drunk. I literally go for the lobby.
I
don't do anything. I hang out and get drunk.
But the actors actually hang out in the lobby too, which is fun.
Right. Like I wasn't sure how many cons I could afford for next year, and then I realized that Jodie got confirmed for it, and I was like, I will sell a kidney. I don't care. I want to go.
It's actually usually Galley's a lot more reasonable than affordable cons for their pictures and autographs.
I want to go.
And then we're like going off topic. We should probably.
I know, but like I was saying, Ant-Man comes out Gallifrey 1 weekend, so we're gonna have to like figure out something for like Thursday, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I'm also because whenever I go to Gallifrey 1, I go to Disneyland right after, and so I'm like, ooh, there'll be a new character in Avengers Campus by the time I go. Because they did confirm it at New York Comic Con. They did a Disney Parks panel, and M'Baku is going to be in the parks the day that Black Panther Wakanda Forever comes out.
Oh.
And there is rumors that Shuri might as well, but that's just complete
I'm so mad I missed Wanda. I'm so mad I missed Wanda. Bring her back now.
I missed Moon Knight by a week and a half, and I was so upset.
Because we're going when the park's all Christmassy, so I'm gonna need them to chill.
But so Ant-Man comes out in February. The Spider-Man Spider-Verse sequel comes out, I think, May or June. Guardians comes out next year. Secret Invasion is in there somewhere. There's a whole lot coming out, and I can't wait. Yeah. Especially between the Star Wars stuff too, because I can't wait. There's just so much coming out. But Yeah, so this was, again, like Miles said, it was really fun talking to you guys about She-Hulk. Hopefully we will get to do this again for a season 2, because it was a lot of fun, or at the very least we can talk about her popping up on the big screen, even though the Kevin robot was like, I'm like, no, she's got to show up, because she's amazing and so much fun.
She's important to later things, so.
Yes. I mean, they can, they're pretty, when they want to, they can keep things secret, but we'll see.
Long as Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland aren't in the room, yeah.
Oh, yes, this is true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. Did you guys see, though, the videos that some of the cast posted about them playing ping pong in costume?
No, but that's adorable.
I will have to send you guys a link afterwards, because it was, Charlie Cox playing ping pong in his Daredevil costume was a lot of fun to watch. Mark Ruffalo in the background in his mocap suit, All right, guys. Well, this is going to wrap up this episode of Temple of Geek. We want to thank everybody who tuned in today and listened to us ramble. But, we love this show. We love these characters, love the MCU. So we're going to talk and talk and talk. We could probably talk even more if we don't stop ourselves. And I want to thank Monica and Alexandra for being the guests today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok by using the handle Temple of Geek. If you want to check out some of our other episodes or shows, why don't you head over to templeofgeek.com, and there you will find all sorts of content that pertains to the world of geek, and none of it is clickbait, because that's annoying. All right, bye everybody.
Please follow us on Twitter at Temple of Geek. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Temple of Geek. And remember to visit templeofgeek.com, your one stop for all things geek.
Goodbye.
This will conclude our transmission.